Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. So this happened about 8 months ago, and I'm still getting a kick out of how it all played out. I work as a systems analyst for a tech company, mostly from home, and I've always been pretty good at reading the fine print and understanding how systems work. That attention to detail is what saved me when my HOA decided to pick a fight they couldn't win. Let me start from the beginning. My wife and I had been living in this suburban community for about 3 years when I finally decided to pull the trigger on buying my first electric vehicle. I'd been wanting a Tesla Model Y for months, and with gas prices going crazy and my company offering some green incentives, it finally made financial sense. Now, our neighborhood is one of those master-planned communities that developers love to build. You know the type: cookie-cutter houses, perfectly manicured lawns, and an HOA that thinks they're running a small country. The houses all look similar, there's a community pool nobody uses, and every street has some nature-themed name even though they bulldozed all the actual nature to build the place. The thing about our house that makes this whole story possible is that we got lucky with a corner lot. Most people don't think much about lot positioning, but it turned out to be crucial. Our front yard faces the main HOA street like everyone else, but our side yard runs along a busier county road that connects to the highway. I didn't think much of it when we bought the house, other than occasionally hearing more traffic noise, but that county road frontage was going to become very important later. Before I even started shopping for the Tesla, I did what any reasonable person would do. I pulled out our HOA bylaws and read through them cover to cover. These things are usually longer than most novels and about as exciting as watching paint dry, but I needed to know what I was getting into. The bylaws were pretty standard HOA nonsense. No boats or RVs parked in driveways, no exterior storage tanks, no window air conditioning units visible from the street. There was also this catch-all clause that said all exterior modifications had to be approved by something called the Architectural Review Committee, or ARC for short. But here's the key thing. Nowhere in those 37 pages of rules did it mention anything about electric vehicle chargers. Not a word. I figured this made sense since the HOA was established back in 2019, when EVs were still pretty uncommon in our area. The people who wrote these rules probably never even thought about home charging equipment, so I went ahead and bought the Tesla. Beautiful car, by the way, pearl white with the black interior. The first few weeks of owning it were great, but I quickly realized that relying on public charging stations was going to get old fast. The nearest supercharger was about 15 minutes away, and the slow chargers at the grocery store meant I'd be sitting around for hours just to top off the battery. That's when I decided to install a home charger. I did my research and found a good local electrician who specialized in EV installations. The plan was simple: put a Tesla wall connector on the side of my garage where it would be barely visible from the street and wouldn't interfere with anything. Being the rule follower that I am, I submitted the proper paperwork to the ARC. I included detailed specs for the charger, photos showing exactly where it would go, and the electrician's installation plan. The thing is sleek and modern looking, about the size of a small mailbox, and would be mounted on the garage wall facing my driveway. You'd have to be standing in my driveway to even see it clearly. Then I waited and waited. The HOA bylaws said the RC had 30 days to respond to any request. If they didn't respond within 30 days, the request was automatically approved. This seemed pretty straightforward to me. Day 15 passed. No response. Day 25. Still nothing. On day 31, I called the management company that handles our HOA communications. The woman who answered the phone seemed confused and said she'd look into it. 3 days later, she called back and said they had no record of my request and I should resubmit it. Now, I'm a systems guy, so I keep good records. I had the certified mail receipt showing they'd signed for my original application. I had photos of the paperwork. I even had the email confirmation from their own online portal. But instead of getting into an argument, I decided to play by their rules. According to the bylaws, 30 days had passed without a response, which meant automatic approval. I called my electrician and scheduled the installation for the following week. The installation went smoothly. My electrician, a guy named Tom who'd been doing this kind of work for 20 years, had the whole thing done in about 4 hours. He ran a new 240-volt line from my electrical panel, mounted the charger on the garage wall, and tested everything twice. The charger looked exactly like I'd planned: clean, professional, and barely noticeable unless you were specifically looking for it. For exactly 48 hours, life was perfect. I was charging my car at home, saving money on gas, and feeling pretty good about my small contribution to reducing emissions. Then Tuesday morning happened. I was working from home, sitting at my desk in my home office, when I heard a golf cart pull up outside. Through my window, I could see a woman getting out. She was probably in her early 60s, wearing a sun visor and carrying a clipboard. This was my first encounter with what would become my nemesis in this whole story. The doorbell rang, and when I answered, she introduced herself as the HOA president. Let's call her Karen, because that's basically what she was, even though I'm keeping names anonymous like you asked. She handed me an official-looking letter and started talking before I could even read it. She told me that my unauthorized equipment was in violation of community standards and had to be removed immediately. The letter itself was pretty dramatic. It called my charger an unauthorized installation with an unaesthetic appearance that violated the community's architectural integrity. I had 10 days to remove it or face a $100 per day fine. I politely pointed out that I'd submitted the proper paperwork and that according to the bylaws, the 30-day automatic approval clause applied to my situation. Karen just scoffed and said that clause was meant for things like paint colors and mailbox styles, not for what she called industrial machinery. She actually said I was turning my house into a gas station and that the board was denying my request retroactively. The whole conversation lasted maybe 10 minutes, but I could tell this woman was used to getting her way. She had that attitude that some HOA board members develop where they think they're running a small kingdom instead of managing a neighborhood. Before she left, she made it clear that the fine would start accumulating if I didn't remove the charger within 10 days. After she drove away in her golf cart, I sat down and really read through that violation letter. It was signed by all 5 board members and referenced several bylaw sections that seemed only loosely related to my situation. They were clearly trying to intimidate me into backing down without a fight. But here's the thing about being a systems analyst. I'm really good at finding the holes in any system, and I was starting to suspect that our HOA's system had some pretty big holes. I spent that evening researching everything I could about HOA law in our state. I learned that HOAs can enforce their rules, but only if those rules are reasonable and consistently applied. I also learned that they can't just make up new rules retroactively to target something they don't like. More importantly, I started looking into what happens when HOA rules conflict with local government regulations. That's when things got interesting. The next day, I decided to attend the HOA's monthly board meeting, which happened to be that Thursday evening. They'd switched to virtual meetings since the pandemic, so I logged into their Zoom call right at 7 p.m. sharp. There were maybe 15 other homeowners on the call, which was pretty typical according to the neighbors I'd talked to. Most people in our community just pay their fees and hope the HOA leaves them alone. The board went through their usual business, approving landscaping contracts, discussing pool maintenance, and arguing about holiday decoration policies. When they got to new business, I unmuted myself and asked to speak about my violation letter. Karen, who was running the meeting, seemed surprised that I'd shown up. She let me present my case, so I shared my screen and showed photos of at least 15 other houses in our neighborhood that had various exterior equipment. Large air conditioning units, satellite dishes, pool equipment, elaborate holiday decorations, and even a couple of basketball hoops. None of these had been fined or forced to remove their equipment. I also showed them the documentation proving I'd followed the proper ARC submission process and that the 30-day automatic approval period had passed. I was calm and professional, sticking to the facts and the actual bylaws. The board wasn't having any of it. Karen argued that EV chargers were different because they set a bad precedent and weren't in keeping with the community's character. Another board member, an older guy who seemed to really hate technology, said that electric cars were just a fad and that accommodating them would hurt property values. But it was what Karen said next that really caught my attention. She said that this was a residential community, not a commercial charging depot. She worried that if they let me have one charger, soon everyone would want them, and then people would be coming from all over to fuel up. She called it a traffic and safety hazard. That's when the idea hit me. A commercial charging depot. What a wonderful concept. The board voted to uphold their violation and maintain the fine schedule. The vote was unanimous, and they made it clear they expected compliance within the original 10-day deadline. I thanked them for their time and logged off the call. I paid the first $100 fine the next day with a note that said payment under protest. I needed to buy some time to research what was becoming a much bigger plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I forgot all about fighting the HOA on their own terms. Instead, I started researching county zoning ordinances and business licensing requirements. I spent hours on the county website, reading through zoning maps and commercial development guidelines. That's when I found what I was looking for. Our property, because of that corner lot positioning, had something called RMU zoning on the side that faced the county road. RMU stands for Residential Mixed Use, which meant that certain types of small businesses could operate from that part of the property without conflicting with residential zoning. Apparently, back when our neighborhood was first developed, the county had planned to put a small corner store where our house eventually got built. That plan never happened, but the zoning never got changed back to purely residential. Most people would never notice this kind of detail, but remember, I'm good with systems and documentation. I called the county planning department and spoke with a very helpful woman who explained that low-impact, environmentally friendly home businesses were not only allowed under RMU zoning, but were actually encouraged by current county policy. Electric vehicle charging stations, she told me, were specifically mentioned in the county's green development initiatives. This is where things started getting expensive, but I figured it would pay off in the long run. I contacted a business lawyer and formed an LLC. I called it Green Charge Solutions, which sounded professional and environmental. I also applied for all the necessary business licenses and permits with the county. Then I called a commercial electrical contractor who specialized in public EV charging stations. This wasn't the same guy who'd installed my little home charger. This was a company that did big installations for shopping centers and office complexes. I explained what I wanted to do, and after they surveyed my property, they said it was definitely possible. The county roadside of my property was about 150 feet long, with good access to power and plenty of space for multiple charging stations. The plan we developed was beautiful in its simplicity. 10 Level 2 commercial chargers, each capable of fully charging most electric vehicles in 4 to 6 hours. Each station would have its own payment processing system that accepted credit cards and connected to all the major EV charging apps. The whole setup would be professional, clean, and completely legal under county regulations. Getting the permits took about 3 weeks, but county staff were actually excited about the project. Apparently, our area was what they called a charging desert. Lots of EVs, but very few public charging options. My proposed station would be the only public charging facility within 5 miles. I took out a small business loan to cover the installation costs. It wasn't cheap, about $40,000 for the whole setup, but the business projections looked solid. With the number of EVs in our area growing every month, I expected to break even within 2 years and turn a decent profit after that. The installation crew showed up on a Monday morning 3 weeks later. Karen must have seen the commercial electrical truck and workers, because she came speeding over in her golf cart within an hour. She was not happy. She demanded to know what was going on and threatened to call the police if I didn't stop what she called an illegal commercial operation. I politely explained that everything was properly permitted and that the work was being done on the RMU-zoned portion of my property. Karen clearly didn't understand what that meant, but she could see that this was way bigger than my original Tesla charger. The crew was trenching new high-voltage electrical lines, setting concrete foundations, and installing these sleek black metal charging posts along the fence line that separated my property from the county road. Each charging station was about 7 feet tall and looked like a modern gas pump, but cleaner and more high-tech. They had digital displays showing charging status, payment readers, and even Wi-Fi connectivity so users could monitor their charging remotely. By Thursday, the installation was complete. 10 charging stations lined the county roadside of my property with a small but professionally designed sign that read, "Green Charge Solutions, Public EV Charging Available." The sign was completely within county guidelines and had been approved as part of my business permit. I have to admit, it looked pretty impressive. The charging stations were spaced evenly along the fence, each one painted in a charcoal gray that looked professional and modern. The electrical work was all underground and invisible. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was a public charging station that just happened to be next to a residential neighborhood. Friday morning, I got my first customer. A guy driving a Chevy Bolt who worked for a delivery company had been using a slow charger at a shopping center about 20 minutes away. He'd found my station on an app called PlugShare and decided to try it out. He was thrilled to find a convenient, fast charging option so close to his delivery route. By the end of the first week, I'd had 12 different customers. Word was spreading on social media and the various EV owner forums. People were posting photos and reviews, calling it the best new charging option in the area. That's when the legal threats started. The following Monday, I got a certified letter from the HOA's attorney. It was full of legal language about illegal commercial enterprises, violations of aesthetic covenants, and demands for immediate cessation of all business activities. They threatened a lawsuit if I didn't shut down within 72 hours. Karen also started calling the county planning department daily, demanding they revoke my permits and shut down what she kept calling an illegal business. She filed complaints with code enforcement, the environmental health department, and even tried to get the fire marshal involved. The county wasn't budging. Every inspection came back with the same result. Everything was properly permitted, legally compliant, and operating according to all applicable regulations. My business license was valid, my electrical work was up to code, and my zoning was appropriate for the type of operation I was running. Things came to a head about 6 weeks after the charging station opened. The county sent a senior zoning inspector out to do a comprehensive review of my operation. Karen had apparently been making such a fuss that they wanted to document everything thoroughly to make sure there were no legitimate complaints. The inspection was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. and Karen made sure to be there along with 2 other board members and their lawyer. I think they expected the county to shut me down on the spot. The inspector, a middle-aged guy who'd been doing this kind of work for over 20 years, spent about an hour walking my property line, checking all the permits, reviewing the electrical installation, and documenting everything with photos. Karen followed him around the whole time, pointing out what she considered violations and demanding action. When he finished his inspection, the inspector gathered everyone together and delivered his verdict. He told Karen that everything was in perfect order. The property was correctly zoned for this type of business, all permits had been properly obtained and were current, and the installation met all safety and technical requirements. He explained that HOA aesthetic rules couldn't override county zoning laws, especially when a business was operating legally on property zoned for commercial use. He also pointed out that since the charging stations were accessible from the county road, traffic and parking were the county's jurisdiction, not the HOA's. The HOA lawyer tried to argue that the charging stations were ugly and hurt property values. The inspector, who clearly dealt with this kind of complaint regularly, just adjusted his glasses and said he'd seen plenty of ugly things that were perfectly legal. 10 metal charging posts, he pointed out, were hardly an eyesore compared to some of the industrial facilities he regulated. When Karen complained about increased traffic, the inspector reminded her that the county road was public property and that legal businesses had every right to attract customers. He suggested that if she was concerned about traffic, she should contact the county transportation department about adding speed limit signs or crosswalks. The whole confrontation lasted maybe 20 minutes, and by the end of it, the HOA's lawyer was suggesting they reconsider their legal strategy. The inspector packed up his equipment and told me he'd send a written report confirming that my operation was fully compliant with all county regulations. 3 days later, I got another certified letter from the HOA. This one was much shorter and much less threatening. It officially rescinded all fines related to my original Tesla charger installation. Their lawyer had apparently explained that they couldn't very well fine me for one charger while I was legally operating 10. The business took off faster than I'd expected. Within 2 months of opening, I was averaging about 30 customers per day. Delivery drivers loved the location because it was convenient to the highway but not in heavy traffic. Commuters found that they could plug in while grabbing coffee at a nearby cafe. Even some of my neighbors started using the chargers when they got electric vehicles of their own. The revenue was substantial. I was charging competitive rates, about 25 cents per kilowatt hour, which was less than most public charging networks but still profitable given my low overhead. After paying the business loan and covering electricity costs, I was clearing about $3,000 per month in passive income. More importantly, the charging station was actually improving property values in our neighborhood. Several real estate agents started mentioning it as a selling point for EV owners looking to buy in the area. The county even featured my business in a newsletter about successful green development projects. Karen and the HOA board went quiet for a few months. I think they realized they'd picked a fight they couldn't win and decided to focus their energy on easier targets. I occasionally saw Karen driving around in her golf cart, but she stopped making eye contact when she passed my house. Then, about 4 months after opening, I was checking my business's payment logs when I noticed something interesting. There was a new customer who'd been using my charging station regularly every Tuesday and Friday morning for the past 3 weeks. The charges showed up on a credit card registered to someone with the same last name as Karen. I started paying attention on Tuesday mornings, and sure enough, around 9 a.m., I'd see a brand new silver Audi e-tron pull into my charging station. The driver was always careful to park at the station furthest from my house, plug in quickly, and leave without making any noise. It took me a couple more weeks to confirm it, but eventually I got a clear look. It was definitely Karen. She'd apparently traded in her gas-guzzling SUV for a luxury electric vehicle, and my charging station was the most convenient place for her to charge it. The irony was perfect. The woman who tried to fine me $100 a day for having one small charger was now quietly paying me $25 a week to use one of my 10 commercial chargers. She'd gone from calling my Tesla ugly to driving an even more expensive electric vehicle herself. I never said anything to her directly, but I have to admit I started timing my yard work to coincide with her Tuesday morning charging sessions. There's something deeply satisfying about seeing someone who tried to make your life difficult quietly supporting the business they tried to destroy. The charging station has been operating successfully for 8 months now, and it's exceeded all my business projections. I'm averaging about 40 customers per day during peak months, and I've had to add security cameras and better lighting due to the volume of traffic. The county has been so happy with the project that they're using it as a model for other residential commercial development initiatives. But the real satisfaction comes from knowing that I turned the HOA's attempt to control my property into a profitable business that serves the whole community. They tried to stop me from having one charger, and now I have 10. They said I couldn't run a commercial operation, and now I'm running one of the most successful small businesses in the county. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Karen had just approved my original application for that one small Tesla charger. I probably would have been perfectly happy with my quiet home charging setup. Instead, her attempts to control something that was none of her business led directly to me creating exactly the kind of commercial charging depot she was worried about. The best part is that it's all completely legal and above board. I followed every rule, got every permit, and built something that actually benefits the community. The HOA learned that sometimes when you try to overstep your authority, you end up creating exactly the problem you were trying to prevent. These days, Karen and I have developed an understanding. She uses my charging station regularly and pays her bills on time. I provide clean, reliable service and keep my property looking professional. We don't talk much, but there's a mutual respect that comes from understanding each other's position. I've thought about expanding the business, maybe adding solar panels to make the charging station carbon neutral, or installing faster DC charging equipment for people who need a quicker top-off. But honestly, I'm pretty happy with how things turned out. My original goal was just to charge my Tesla at home. Now I've got a thriving business, the HOA learned to respect property rights, and even my biggest critic has become a regular customer. Sometimes the best revenge really is just living well and running a successful operation that serves your community. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I'm actually excited to be able to contribute here for once. This is currently taking place in a casino in a province in Canada I work at, and it is a bit multifaceted, so I will apologize for the long read, and there is a TLDR at the end. To start, we're technically government employees. Don't ask me why, but we're also union. Yeah, I am a literal bartender in a restaurant where everyone is a unionized government employee. You can see where this is probably going or what kind of environment this has engendered. So first off, employees. There are 3 feet bartenders. As a person who has bartended or managed bars off and on for decades, and we actually get hosed. Like, I have never made so little money working in the service industry, but we have a pension and benefits, and that's pretty choice. We consistently work our asses off while we watch our floor counting their hundreds of dollars at the end of a shift while we only make what happens directly at our bar. The servers are mandated to tip out 2% of drink sales only. Regularly, they ignorantly throw dimes across the table at us and make comments about, "Oh, it was only 50 cents, but I rounded up to $1 because you earned it." Yes, comments like this happen on the regular. The rub is because of the CBA with the union bartenders are not allowed to serve tables, and the servers consistently remind us of this. Here is where it gets bad. They expect the bartenders to also run their food, clean and clear their tables, and still only tip to the literal penny. This is one aspect. Now, as for management, we have numerous times had conversations with management as our servers constantly abandon their tables, go outside to smoke, hang out on their phones, and generally do the barest of minimums. But because they are not on the floor, we have to be. We are mandated and guaranteed 15-minute breaks twice a shift and one 30-minute, which we never get. This is without mentioning once that management refuses to hire any new bartenders due to budgetary constraints. We've spoken to management numerous times, and all we get told is that the servers have the floor and that we can file a grievance with the union. Cue malicious compliance. And it's good. So myself and the other 2 bartenders sat down with our union reps and hammered out the exact parameters of our jobs, management's duties and obligations, and that of our floor. We got everything highlighted, and we now have laminated cardstock behind the bar with the printed and highlighted aspects of our jobs, our job parameters, and our job guarantees. A few weeks ago, we 3 started every shift the same way. Servers would regularly just walk behind the bar to get drinks for themselves or their clients. "Sorry, you're not bartenders, you can't come behind the bar." "What?" "Yeah, sorry, it's in the CBA, we can't take tables, you can't serve our drinks, we'll get to it as soon as we can. Servers now have to wait on us to pour their drinks, pop, water, beer, or even get them ice. That's step 1. We now officially take our 15S and our 30-minute breaks. As such, any and all drink service stops. Here is the best part, as such management, who is otherwise completely useless. Chatting with friends or hiding in their offices now have no choice but to come down and man the bar while we do so. They have to make drinks, stock the bar, which we ensure is needing to be done, and put away, polish our glassware. This is important as we have very specific criteria for our house drinks and what type of vessels they get poured in. This has been amusing to watch, but we enjoy our breaks, and I am catching up on some reading. It's only been a few weeks, but the servers seem to be getting it, and all of a sudden there are 2 new bartenders in training on the schedule and 2 more apparently being hired. Maybe this malicious compliance stuff does work, edit/update. So, I need to fill in some gaps here from the comments section. 1. Management runs on partial P&L bonus structures. For those that don't know, that is profit and loss. The less they spend while maintaining a baseline of profitability, the more money they make. This means we regularly run out of glassware, etc. Also, why we are frequently short-staffed too. Management is very questionable at this job. I have had in my past been bar manager at 3 different locations, 2 nightclubs and a speakeasy, and watching my bar run out of things like triple sec, garnish, and vodka, yes really, is beyond insane to me. 3. The upper management has a very weird nepotism feel to it. Every manager below the GM is a former co-worker or friend of the GM from other locations they've worked at, drinking buddies and generally people with no actual experience in the field. 4. The reviews of this place are atrocious. The only good ones seen recently are fake reviews written by the supervisors hired, the managers hired under fake names, or generally come from direct bar service. I do not mean to dump on the floor or servers because they do work hard, but the bar is the only staff ever on the floor from start to finish and the first point of contact at the door because we regularly do not have a host-hostess. 5. To add, our oldest bartender has been there 7 years and is around 60-ish years old. He holds or has held a supervisory position and was the first and last point of contact for a lot of clients and regulars. We have very similar mindsets and frequently leave the bar to address issues and then try to correct them, above and beyond our scope of duties, which is why the bartenders there are seen so favorably. 6. Again, the floor does work their butts off. I will never be an us versus them person. No serving position is easy. But this venue has a floor staff full of people that regularly walk off for smoke breaks, sit in the back on their phones, and who generally ignore their clients. Because of the nature of the business, the floor on slow nights will still make $150 regardless of good service or not, so they are not the most motivated. Case in point is one table who just last night waited almost 20 minutes just to pay their bill because their server was outside smoking and on the phone. 7. This is my first unionized position in the service industry, and in the province of BC, Canada, is governed by the BCGEU, or the BC General Employees Union. I have never been in a position like this, and while being the newest person, took some time to rope in the other 2 long-term bartenders to actually do something about the working conditions. All of our new hires behind the bar will be notified of their rights and will not be fed to the wolves. It's not how we operate. 8. If the job sucks, it is time to dip. Yes, this is a stop in my life that is currently necessary. I own a business but have a kid, and this job offers me a pension and quality employer-paid benefits. I have 2 years of school left, and while I'm in my early 40s, having the stability for myself and my kid while having their braces and my vision prescriptions covered is a nice little safety net. The next one is an entitled People Story. Hi y'all, I'm back with another story from my time working at a very popular theme park in Florida, a magical rat planet of sorts. Let me preface this by saying I shared this story a year ago on a few different subreddits, one being True Scary Stories. However, many of the actions of the below mentioned individual were creepy and entitled, so I decided to retell it here. This was, to this day, one of my most terrible experiences at Magical Rat Planet. This situation happened when I worked food at a resort where I met a man, D, 40 plus, at the time. D was a day shift, short order fry cook, and mostly worked in the quick service burger area and soup and sandwich, SS, area. Most people my age weren't very nice to him because he wasn't considered attractive and he was very overweight. However, I was respectful to everyone, especially those older, so I was always kind to him and made conversation. I would even eat with him on certain occasions. D started opening up about his life. He said he was having some financial and health difficulties. He also told me about his ex that had been physically and emotionally abusive towards him. I told him that he deserved better and that I hoped he would find someone special one day. We continued being friendly and joking with each other daily. During that time, everyone was pretending to have work wives and husbands. It was a joke and something to do because honestly, the job was busy but boring. D and I became work husband and wife, which didn't consist of anything different than what we were already doing as work friends. I also had 2 other work husbands, one was even gay. One day I came to work to everyone laughing and looking at me. I asked what was up, and my friends jokingly said, "Congratulations on your new boyfriend." I was confused and was like, "What? I don't have a new boyfriend." They explained that they knew that already, but D had been going around telling everyone we were in a real relationship and they found it funny. I, however, did not. I confronted D about it, and he said that he had said it. I asked him why, and he said he wanted us to be in a real relationship. I was taken aback because he was 20 years my senior, and I thought he understood we were just friends. I told him this, and he said that he had fallen in love with me. I told D that we had only known each other a few months and that I was kind to him, and he confused that with something more. He insisted he loved me, so I walked away. The next day, his friend C came to me and said D had been crying to her about me. She said that he had confessed to her that he loved me so much. She asked me to talk to him because he was devastated. I told her I didn't feel the same and I had already spoken with him. This went on for a few days and he continued telling people we were together while crying to see about me. I confronted him again angrily and told him to stop lying about our relationship, and he apologized. I also confronted my friends about joking, as it wasn't funny to me and was making the situation worse. It had even made it to management. I stopped talking to D after that and kept my distance. The following week I was working in pizza shop with my friend P. We played around a lot with one another. He delivered pizzas to the guests in the resort, and we were discussing that when he brushed something off my shirt. D saw this as he was walking through. He stood there staring for an uncomfortable amount of time in silence before walking away. Later, after my break, I was moved to Burger with D, and he abruptly started crying and demanded to know if P and I were together. I told him we weren't, but even if we were, it was none of his business. He asked me why I was suddenly so mean to him as he loved me so much. He was crying really hard, which freaked me out. I told him to stop saying that. He said it was true and that he would be really good to me. I told him he was making me very uncomfortable. He said he would never do anything to hurt me because he loved me too much. I told him that I hadn't gone to management because I understood his financial issues and knew he needed this job, but if he continued, I would have no choice. He asked me not to and said that he really meant what he said about loving me. He started crying harder. I told him he and I would never happen. His face turned really red and he looked at me. He was crying very hard and screamed out, "I'll K** all myself if I can't have you. I hate blackmail. I hate people trying to force me to do things I don't want to do." This pissed me off and I told him that what he was saying was manipulative and wouldn't work on me. He had crossed a line and that all communication between us was terminated. I left out and spoke with a coordinator. They are the people right under management. The managers were in a meeting. D and I never worked together again, though C said he was still devastated. I was moved exclusively to night shift, and on the few occasions when I was needed on day shift, it was on days he didn't work. Anyway, thank you for watching.